Did Joe Biden rape Tara Reid? That's a very, very big question. And it has caused multiple problems now for the Democratic Party, which in other circumstances, one would have thought would have been skating towards a presidential victory in November. After all, Donald Trump, increasingly unhinged at the dispatch box in the press briefing room, on the Twitter handle that has become notorious across the world, you would not have thought that such a man would have any chance at all of being re-elected in November. But the reality is, for the second time running, the Democrats have picked probably the one person in America that could lose to Donald Trump. It's not just his record of support for the Iraq war and then lying about it. It's not just his track record of being actually perpetually lying about one thing or another. He was even forced out of a previous presidential primary race because he was caught lying and plagiarizing. So we're not talking about a man with any reputation to defend as a paragon of truthfulness. It's not just his deliberate courting of the worst racists in America, Storm Thurmond, and the segregationists of his past. It's not just that he boasted about having written the Patriot Act, which has caused so much grief and oppression for people all across America. It's not just his long record of shilling for corporations, of shifting the Democratic Party to the right. It's not even just the fact that he now cannot appear in public without his long-suffering wife, or is it his sister? I don't know. He doesn't know, at his side. It's not just the fact that he can't even read now an autocue. It's not just the fact that he's visibly melting in front of our eyes. It's not just the fact that his teeth shot out and across the studio floor during one of the earlier debates in the primary season. Not just that blood comes from his eye on television. It's the fact that he has quite clearly mentally degenerated at such a rapid pace that, frankly, you'd have to have your head examined to consider him a credible candidate for the presidency. And then along comes this. Tara Reid made credible accusations of sexual offenses against the Democratic Party's candidate for the presidency in November. We know that because she's not just making them now. We know that because she made them at the time. We know that because she made them to her neighbor at the time. We know that because her mother called Larry King live on CNN back then, decades ago, before anyone could have possibly imagined that this corpse would be dug up and put forward as the Democratic Party hopeful. So quite clearly, evidently, whatever allegations she's not making them because he's the candidate against Donald Trump, because she made them decades before that was even imaginable. It's pretty unimaginable now. Now, one of the few journalists who has made this story into what I suspect will become the story in the downfall of Joe Biden as the Democratic Party's nominee is our old friend Katie Halper. Mind you, the surrogate for Joe Biden has just called for her and Rolling Stone magazine to be prosecuted by the FBI for telling us about allegations made by a woman who claims to have been sexually assaulted. Whatever happened to the Pussy Hat Brigade? Whatever happened to the liberal nostrum that women must be believed? Whatever happened to the Me Too movement? Whatever happened to the pussy-hatted Washington Post, the pussy-hatted Huffington Post, whatever happened to the ranks, serried ranks of liberals who told us in the case of Julian Assange, that women had to be believed, that women could not be guilty of inventing allegations of sexual malfeasance by prominent people. They had to be believed. Now, these same liberals are backing Joe Biden. Imagine. The pussy hats for Joe Biden. And they don't want to know about the woman who's making the allegations. Well, Katie Halper and those few other journalists and correspondents who have followed this show, Chris Hayes, belatedly, for example, they tried to get him sacked for doing so too. These people are owed a debt of gratitude by all of us. Because we wouldn't want a rapist in the White House, would we? Oh, wait. You know, I think it actually speaks greater volume than anything I could say about the decline and fall of the American empire than that the current lineup for president is Donald Trump against Joe Biden. Nothing I could say could be more damning of the fading, failing American empire than that. The American people deserve much better. Last time I was forced on my media platforms and so on to support Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party because I could not honestly ask anyone to vote for either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. I did make the point last time that I'm not happy that Donald Trump is the president of the United States, but I'm very happy that Hillary Clinton is not the president of the United States. And I've got to tell you, that's where I'll be in this coming contest also. Unless my colleague and friend, Governor Jesse Ventura, secures the Green Party nomination, then at least I'll have someone positively to proselytize for. He is a man that we'd be lucky to see in the saddle, riding towards the guns. Katie Halper is my first guest coming up in just a few minutes. And I promise you, this story, whether you're in America or anywhere in the world, is of monumental importance. And there's nobody better to tell it than her. Poor Harry Dunn was mowed down at the age of 19 by a woman driving on the wrong side of the road. We know now that that woman was Anne Sekulas, who was described rather coyly as the wife of an American diplomat who was based on a so-called Royal Air Force station nearby. We now know that her husband was not a diplomat, and therefore she had no diplomatic immunity. And even if she had, that is not the purpose of diplomatic immunity, to allow criminal offenders of an ordinary kind to escape justice in a friendly, couldn't be more friendly country here in Britain. We know now that her husband was not a diplomat, but was an intelligence operative. What an intelligence operative was doing based on an RAF station is, of course, a matter for speculation. We now know that Anne Sekulas was a much more senior intelligence operative than her husband. So what these two intelligence operatives were actually doing in Northamptonshire is a matter for speculation. What is not a matter for speculation is that the British government conspired with the government of the United States, with the deep state of the United States, to allow Mrs. and seculus to avoid justice. And that is a crime of an altogether greater magnitude, because our government, their Member of Parliament, owed a duty of care to Harry Dunn's family. Our government owes a duty of care first and above all to the people of Britain, not to the deep state of the United States, not to the government of the United States. But it failed in that duty. It prioritized the interests of the American intelligence operators involved. And it's always the cover-up, isn't it? They lied and lied and lied. They lied to Harry Dunn's parents. They lied to the public. They lied to Parliament. It's always the lying and the cover-up that brings them down. And thanks to our guest in the second hour, Radd Seiger, the spokesperson for the Harry Dunn family, this matter is now in court, and to their credit, the Mail on Sunday are doggedly pursuing this story, and we now know of an astonishing turn. The British authorities didn't just lie to the family of Harry Dunn, they lied to their own police force in Northamptonshire. They lied to the police in their own country to subvert, pervert the course of justice. It doesn't get much more serious than that. And in the second hour, we'll be talking about it. In the rest of the show, we'll be talking about two different sides of the coronavirus issue. We'll be talking to Moats Medic, our very own medical expert, Dr. Ranjit Brar, a surgeon of note, who's been with us right throughout this dreadful crisis of the coronavirus, which has now affected millions and millions of people around the world, 2 million of which have been officially recorded as having the coronavirus 19. But many, many millions more clearly have it. And well over 100 British medical personnel have fallen at their place of work from the virulence and infectivity of this virus. It's not a joke. It's not something to call a hoax. It's not something to work yourself up into a hunt for Rothschilds or Gates or Soros or any of the usual targets of the conspiracy theory maniacs. This is deadly, deadly serious. And I spoke in my short on RT this week about the dangers of sending workers back to work in the toxic, potentially fatal environment of coronavirus Britain. But we'll also be talking about another aspect, one we haven't talked about before. I don't know about you, but I won't be going back into any big crowds anytime soon. Perhaps never at all. Perhaps I'll watch my football on the television from now on. And indeed, that may very well be about to happen, because there's so much money invested in professional football in Britain and around the world. There's so much money at stake that the problem of unfinished leagues, cups, championships has now become a clear and present danger to the economic survival of even some of the most famous clubs. Now, Liverpool were well on their way to winning the English Premiership. Celtic were well on their way to winning the Scottish Premiership. Will both be dogged for the rest of time with an asterisk after their name for the season 2019-2020. Champions elect, but not actually champions? Or should we restart the football behind closed doors? Some people say we could have cardboard cutouts of the crowd, like at Manchester City, for example. We could have crowd noise on the television. Well, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm here to tell you that I hope that the season can be restarted and completed, because if I'm going nuts, it's the lack of football above all other things in my personal and social life that's driving me nuts. How about you? All of this coming up over the next 3 hours, and your calls and your emails and your comments, because we're back at full strength. And thanks to Ian Puddock and his super alcoholic hand spray, my God, as a non-drinker, I feel this is affecting me. I'm no longer wearing gloves. I'm going to take a quick break, and then it's Katie Halper.